I do not dispute at all that people see things or that they imagine that they're seeing things. What I object to is the interpretation of what they're seeing being spaceships.
I can't claim 100% that these things I'm photographing are extraterrestrials or what, but I do know they are what I actually photographed and what I saw with my eyes.
Are UFOs really extraterrestrial, or are there rational explanations for the phenomenon in events closer to home? Unidentified flying objects have a compelling attraction for anyone who has experienced them, directly or indirectly. In the 1960s, Sir Peter Horsley carried out his own private investigation.
I didn't believe or disbelieve in them. I was just inquiring into them. I was inquiring into them because there were an awful lot of reports around at the time, and because they were aircrew, I suppose, pilots and what have you.
As an RAF fighter pilot who eventually rose to the rank of Air Marshal at the Ministry of Defence, Peter Horsley was uniquely placed to know whether the UFO phenomenon has any substance to it. Early in his career, when he was a young equerry at Buckingham Palace, he became interested in UFOs.
I was working in the palace at the time, and we all discussed it. Prince Philip, General Browning, we all discussed it, sometimes jokingly, sometimes quite seriously. And I think Prince Philip was very open-minded about the whole subject. And I suggested one day that I should do a little research into it. He was absolutely fine. He said, don't bring any adverse publicity on the palace, obviously. Don't become a crank about it. You know, go ahead, inquire into it. The fighter command rang me up and said, we have a case here with a crew of a vampire night fighter who've seen an unidentified flying object flying right over them. And I then went to Westmoreland, spoke to the station commander, and he introduced me to these two. And they said they were at 20,000 feet. They saw this object approaching. It was circular, it had bright lights around it, and it went over the top of them at a vast speed, at about 1,000 miles an hour. And when I got back, I checked up, and the radar had picked it up as well. There were many reports.
While there are plenty of UFO reports, there's an acute shortage of tangible evidence. But listening to leading ufologists, you might not think so.
There are over 4,000 cases that we have in our database of these things landing and leaving some physical event or trace. Now people say, where's the hard evidence? There are metal samples that have been studied that have isotopic anomalies that would be consistent with something originating from off the planet, and they are not out of a meteorite because they are manufactured. These exist. The question is, who's looking at that data and who's reporting it? It's a little bit like...
The real question is, where is this alien material, and can it be independently examined? One piece scientifically authenticated could settle the UFO debate once and for all. We were told that in Chile a local gold miner had recovered some strange metal from the site of a UFO crash high in the mountains. We located Jorge Ibarra's village and the metal that is allegedly from outer space.
Everybody asking from where it came. I told them from UFO. It is because I saw when the UFO have accident over the mountain. I heard nothing more than this. And I see the lights. Some, I don't know how you say in English, many lights. That's all.
Jorge Ibarra claims he saw a spacecraft hit the top of a mountain and that he made his way to the crash site. Once there, he says he saw pieces of metal scattered all around.
I saw many. I received 10 pieces. Okay, 10 pieces I keep into the sample bag and I back to my home. I need to make an analysis, especially I hope from London.
Initially, Jorge Ibarra said he was willing to allow a sample of his metal to be independently tested in England. Naturally, he would have to accompany it, although he had no passport. Later, he imposed restrictions on the methods of testing and asked for sums of money that made it impossible to carry out. So metal that allegedly has come from outer space remains locked away in a china cabinet in the home of a shrewd Chilean gold miner. In Russia, there was another lead to possible hard evidence that ET is here. High in the Ural Mountains, in a remote area that few foreigners have visited, a group of government geologists apparently discovered some unusual spirals that Russian UFO believers are convinced are of extraterrestrial origin.
Well, the first findings of the spirals were done in 1991 when a state expedition was sent to Ural Mountains to find gold. They're investigating soil, they're making holes and many different things. So during this investigation, just when they washed out the soil, they noticed strange metallic spirals. Some of them were like a human hair in size, with a core inside. Some of them were without core or just core. Some of them were pretty big, approximately 3 centimeters long. But they took them just as a technological pollution. The following expedition that were on 1992 and 1993, again, in a different places, different locations, they found the same type of spirals. I decided to make my own expedition there, and I did it on 1995. We came there exactly to the area where this state expedition were looking for gold, and we have visited the spots. We just took the samples of the soil, washed them out, and we found these spirals. During our investigation, we tried to have a very close look on all possible theories about it.
Spiral samples were taken back to the Institute of Geology in Moscow for detailed examination by scientists there. One of them had been on site in the Ural Mountains when the spirals were found.
There are several points which, at least for the moment, we cannot explain exactly. First, the spirals are distributed over a very wide area. We know that the Ural Mountain region is like a large rubbish dump. There's a lot of industrial pollution. When we went looking specifically for spirals, we tried to make sure our experiment was not contaminated by any other materials.
All the samples that were found in the previous years too, they were taken out from the depths between 2 and 12 meters deep, which also can give us idea about the approximate age of the spirals.
When we washed out the soil sample, it was from at least 6 meters below the surface, and we were careful. Based on this, the deposits in the quarry that the spirals came from have been dated to something in the order of 80 to 100,000 years old. All the experts agreed that the spirals were not organic but manufactured, which begs the question, are these spirals from our civilization or some other? That remains an open question. Sometimes we lean in one direction and then we go in the other.
Valery Uvarov agreed that we could take some of the Russian spirals to Britain for an independent analysis. Meanwhile, in America, there was news of another source of alleged extraterrestrial material.
No one seems to know what the function is, and no one has been able to explain this wavy pattern. And we have done tests in strong electrostatic fields in which there is this odd movement side to side.
Wow. Linda Howe is a science journalist and a radio broadcaster. In 1996, she received from an anonymous listener a mysterious package containing some odd material. An accompanying letter explained how it had come to be in the possession of the donor.
His grandfather had died in 1974 and had left a diary in which he says he had gone to a crash of a wedge-shaped vehicle in New Mexico in the 1940s. And metal samples had been gathered by this grandfather that he says it was extraterrestrial.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio for further investigation.
Once again, Roswell. A story that is so much at the heart of UFO mythology.
Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico.
And now some strange metal that may or may not have come from a crashed alien spacecraft that no one can prove ever existed. But none of it matters if the metal turns out to be manufactured and not of this earth.
Everybody who's looked at it says it's been structured by someone for some reason. We just don't know who or why.
We brought some of Linda Howe's crash site metal and samples of the Russian spirals back to England, to the prestigious laboratories of AEA Technology at Harwell. Dr. Alison Crossley, one of AEA's leading scientists, joined forces with Dr. Keith Rogers of Cranfield University to conduct the tests.
It's predominantly magnesium, and it does have layers, which very, very thin layers, which do have bismuth in them.
It's not just a single sheet of material, it's built up from several layers, and each layer is slightly different than the previous layer, which makes it quite interesting, quite deliberate manufacturing.
We've come across magnesium in combination with the other elements that were detected, like bismuth. But in that layered form, I wouldn't know why it was made like that.
This combination of magnesium and bismuth is not commonly found in general manufacturing processes, so it's a fairly specialised application, whatever it's been used for. But to be honest, I wouldn't like to hazard a guess.
Right from the very beginning of my research as a science reporter, my expectation was that within a very short period of time I would find the person or the industry that worked with this material had made this layered material, and I would come up with some explanation, yes, this is used in to do X.
Linda Howe had already asked some of America's leading manufacturers of exotic alloys if they knew of this strange magnesium bismuth material.
Do you know what this is?
I'll tell you, I haven't the slightest idea. I frankly would see if you can get in touch with a metallurgist at Sandia National Laboratories.
Boy, that's a weird one.
Yeah, and you're asking me if I know what this is, or what? Yeah. I have no idea what it, I mean, I could make some wild guesses, but I really don't know.
The world's largest producer of magnesium is Dow, D-O-W Chemical.
We don't do anything like that here within the Dow Chemical Company.
I haven't been able to find a single person anywhere who has any knowledge about working with bismuth and magnesium zinc in these micron layers, or has a clue what it's supposed to do.
But is it from an alien spacecraft?
I think it couldn't have come from outer space because I don't think it would have survived entry into the atmosphere.
Because of its structural integrity and the form that we see it, it really wouldn't lend itself very well to a structural material, for example, because it would fall apart.
Magnesium melts at a very low temperature, so I don't think it could have. I don't think it's ever been out off the Earth.
When it comes to this question of how do you prove an extraterrestrial origin on anything, the one most common hypothesis is if you can come up with an isotopic ratio in elements that we can't find anywhere on the Earth, then you have something that is extraterrestrial.
The isotopic composition is really very similar to that you would expect from any piece of magnesium, for example, or any piece of bismuth. It is fairly unambiguously of a terrestrial origin.
Terrestrial and manufactured, but so far no one knows by whom and for what purpose. What about the Russian spirals that geologists found in the Ural Mountains and the UFO believers think could be 100,000 years old?
The spirals looked very pretty. They were filaments round a core. The filament was tungsten metal and the core was molybdenum. They actually looked to us like light bulb filaments. They did have the same structure that a light bulb filament would have. But there was a lot of metallic debris with the spirals. We found osmium and iridium, commonly found in pen nibs actually. I think they could well be scrap material that had been dumped there.
It's not impossible. The Ural Mountains region is known to be an area of top-secret industries, with factories hidden among its valleys. But Russian ufologists know this well. The mystery is that they still believe that the filament lookalikes found there predate our civilization. It seems that reliable eyewitnesses and pictures are the hardest evidence we may have for UFOs. The extraordinary pictures which this East Anglian photographer has recently taken have never been shown on television. If they pass professional scrutiny, they might support the argument that ET is here. Exciting though it is, visual evidence of UFOs is far from reliable. This one in Mexico City is generally considered to be a hoax. It has the characteristics of a balloon or a clever composite picture. But some UFO pictures are more credible than others. How seriously can we take images like these?
There are so many cheaters there who do it deliberately, who use this the people's wanting to believe something like that to their own purposes, mercantile, commercial type purpose, making money out of it. And frauds. There are so many frauds in this particular area.
But there is a hard core of definitely not faked and hoaxed material that shows craft, big craft, three-dimensional maneuvering with incredible capabilities in our skies.
We have hundreds of photographs that are daylight crystal clear. They've been analyzed and they're not hoaxes. There's thousands of feet of videotape of these objects.
Invariably, there's nothing much to be discerned from most of these blurred images, and their provenance is often unknown. In a quiet suburb of Lowestoft, what could prove to be a classic UFO story is unfolding. It involves David Spohr and his wife Jean, a respected local couple. David is an accomplished landscape photographer, but he says he cannot make a living from it. We paid him for exclusive television access to other video pictures that he had taken. Jean Spoor is a local councillor, and during the day while she's at work, her husband spends many hours on the roof of their house scanning the skies of Lowestoft. During the past 18 months, David Spoor has recorded some extraordinary pictures.
One August evening, I think it was the 19th, about 7:45, I was closing my garage door and just looked up in the sky. I very often do that, being interested in photography, I'm interested in skies. I looked up and I saw this sort of strange cylindrical shaped object, cigar shaped, whatever you like to call it, coming over from the west, more or less directly over the house. I was sort of quite rooted to the spot for a few seconds, because it was just unusual to see something coming without any wings, no sound, anything. I propped the camera on the fence just outside the back door, got a few frames of it before it sort of seemed to accelerate at terrific speed into the east and disappeared completely. That was the first time that I'd ever seen anything, or certainly videoed anything.
In the following year, David Spoor saw and photographed at least 2 more UFOs, and the next extraordinary sighting was also witnessed by his wife.
I was actually in my sun lounge reading the paper, as far as I can remember. I had my camera with me most of the time, and looked out and I saw this object which appeared to be hovering in the northeast. I picked my camera up and I started filming this object. At first it was stationary for a minute or so, and then it appeared to move sideways.
It was moving over the bush, coming across, going out to sea, in the direction of the sea, very, very slowly. No sound, just hovering across. But unfortunately I was going to work and it was a deadline, so I could only watch it for a certain time, and then I had to leave it with David to see where it ended.
When it went behind the tree, I know I came around to the side of the house and more towards the front to get see if I could pick it up again, and I did pick it up, and it had moved the other way and I lost it behind part of the house. And this wasn't a tremendously long sighting, but it was an interesting one because it was a daylight sighting, and the object appeared to be quite, well, I don't know about solid, but it certainly was a luminous object rather than just a light, and it appeared to be what might be called a sort of almost traditional saucer. That is what I can only describe it as, what it appeared to me.
The fact is, David Spoor is a skillful stills photographer. What does he say to those who will insist that he's faking these videos?
All I can say is just have a look at what I've taken, have a look at what the footage I've done, and especially perhaps the daylight ones, and if they can work out a way how that could be faked, they're a better man than I am, because I don't know how I could have faked any of those, and I can say categorically that I haven't faked them. They are things that have happened that I have seen, that my wife has seen. Whether people believe me, all I can say is that that is the truth.
The Defence Evaluation and Research Agency at Farnborough is an executive branch of the Ministry of Defence. They agreed to look at David Spoor's pictures. Dr. Richard Crowther is expert in, among other things, identifying space debris in the skies over Britain. We asked him if he knew what the unidentified objects in David Spoor's pictures were.
Potentially it could be a tank from a launch vehicle, it could be any pressurised vessel from a satellite. without any idea of the resolution, any idea of the distance from the observer, any reference point against which the motion can be measured. I'm not confident that it is space debris. This could be some atmospheric phenomenon, such as a cloud, which is illuminated in a certain way by the sun. It's unlikely to be space debris simply because the apparent motion is stationary. If there is an object there, a physical object there in the sky, it could be an aircraft or whatever, but as I say, I would not imagine it's a piece of space debris.
A few days later, Richard Crowther called to say that the image that David Spohr had recorded on the 19th of August could have been the American space shuttle passing over Lowestoft as it returned to Earth. It was scheduled to be over the North Sea around lunchtime that day. David Spohr says his video was taken at about 7:45 in the evening. Spohr's most controversial pictures were to come about a year later.
My wife was actually out at a council meeting with some other councillors, and I looked towards the east, and I managed to get a shot of it with the camera actually propped on the top of our car, so it's fairly steady. It kept in that position for around half a minute or so. Then it suddenly shot off quite a pretty fast speed, fast enough that I couldn't keep up with it. Once it disappeared, I stopped filming and tried to move around to the house to see if I could pick it up anywhere else, and I couldn't see it anywhere. Again, it made no sound whatsoever.
David Spohr willingly agreed to bring his video to London for examination by a team of forensic specialists. Network International regularly assists Scotland Yard in criminal matters. Authenticating photographic and electronic images is Rob Butler's speciality. He had examined 2 of David's videos in detail before delivering his findings.
What appears to be a triangular-shaped object may not be in reality. What appears to be an object moving to the left, in fact, could be a stationary object.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you on that. But on the other hand, what appears to be a triangular object could well be a triangular object, and it could be moving to the left as well.
And there certainly is evidence to suggest that it's actually the camera that's moving, not the object.
I don't think I was moving that much, but I mean, there's a possibility I could have wavered slightly now and again. Yeah. But I think perhaps we can agree to disagree on certain points. But what I would ask you, Rob, is would you agree that was an object in the sky of some sort?
It does appear to be.
Yeah.
It does appear to be, but I believe it's not moving, and it's a point source of light, such as a star.
I was obviously looking through the viewfinder most of the time with the right eye. My left eye is not particularly brilliant, but what I saw through the viewfinder, it did appear to be this triangular, or I thought it was saucer shaped at the time, but it probably is more triangular. Also, my wife was at the front of the house at the time, and she did actually see the object.
David wasn't able to see this through the viewfinder as I saw it, so our perceptions were totally different. From the naked eye, I watched it travel over, and it was flying saucer shape with 2 little portholes, as I call them, and it was just coming over the house. I
believe that the object was that shape, and my wife believes it was the object of that shape, but that's all I can say as I saw it and as I filmed it. I can't prove to you other than what I've got on videotape. That's how it appeared to me.
Rob Butler found a problem with the second unknown image.
If we look closely, you can see a an oval-shaped dark line. Just tells me that this was copied from the TV screen.
Right.
So it makes it difficult for me to say, yes, this is authentic, because it's been produced by a process which could allow anything to be added.
The original of this tape was produced on a DV digital tape, which was one of part of a tape that got chewed up very badly, and fortunately I had made a VHS copy, which I again copied onto other VHSs. There was one of the copies that I did actually shoot off a TV screen, so I could actually see into the object a bit better. To be honest, I'm not 100% certain whether this is that particular tape or not.
But if you look at it from my perspective, I've been asked, is this genuine footage of a genuine occurrence? And I can't say yes to that, because it's a copy, because I believe it was copied off the TV screen. The mere fact that it's not original means that tampering could have happened in its production. So, in answer to the question, is it genuine, I can't say yes.
No. Well, I mean, I can't help you any more on that, other than to say I know at that particular time what I took and what, unfortunately, I didn't have any other witnesses to this, but so I'm the only witness to this particular object, and all I can say is it was an object that went behind the neighbour's house that I filmed.
In the end, the forensic analysis of David Spore's pictures was inconclusive.
I can't claim 100% that these things I'm photographing are extraterrestrials or what, but I do know they are what I actually photographed and what I saw with my eyes.
There are thousands of UFO sightings every year in different countries around the world. And there seems to be no common denominator of age, sex, or profession among those who are seeing them. What are the possible earthly explanations for a phenomenon that so many believe must be extraterrestrial in origin? There has been a spate of UFO sightings in Mexico in recent years. Balls of light, sometimes hovering, sometimes darting across the skies. There's no question that whatever they are, they're real objects. Too many people on too many occasions have independently witnessed and recorded them for it to be a nationwide hoax. The small town of Puebla has become something of a mecca for ufologists. Like David Spore in England, Dr. Soledad de la Peña has found an absorbing new hobby in UFO watching from the roof of her house.
I started to take a genuine interest in the objects in the Puebla skies in around 1991. From the time of the solar eclipse, many objects were seen in parts of the country, and many were seen in this area. I think this is one of the most important night videos that exist, as the object is very low in the sky, and as the shot goes on, we can see its relationship to the city and to the trees. From 1991 until today, I think I've seen around 1,000. 1,000, I'm not exaggerating. I've seen an infinite number of them. They could be spacecraft or secret craft from an advanced country. But that gets absurd because I'd want to ask, what are they looking for here in Puebla? I have discovered that there is a close relationship between the appearance of the UFOs and volcanic activity. When I see a lot of UFOs, it could mean that there's going to be problems with the volcano.
Dr. Soledad may unwittingly have made a connection that some scientists suggest is the answer to the UFOs that appear to be spheres of light.
The empirical analysis that we've completed indicate that most luminous events that people call UFO reports are coupled to earthquake activity, that they're natural phenomena, and both these balls of light, no matter how unusual they may be, and earthquakes have one thing in common: tectonic strain, not extraterrestrial forces.
The theory that deep within the Earth, extreme pressure on rocks produces an electric charge that manifests itself above ground as balls of light is particularly relevant to Mexico. The country rests on a bed of seismic activity, and many, like Dr. Soledad, have seen UFOs in and around Mount Popocatépetl.
I think that if you ask what are the unidentified flying objects, they are regular airplanes, that they are highly classified, unacknowledged high-performance or stealth aircraft. Some of them are Russian airplanes that we bought for evaluation. Flying saucers, I don't think so.
Secret military aircraft in the skies and tectonic strain beneath the Earth may well account for a large percentage of UFO sightings. And over the last 40 years, there's been another possible source: debris in space.
We can track with radars and the telescopes of the order of 8,000 objects. We know the positions of these on a regular basis. One of those, on average, comes back to Earth a day. When they come back to Earth, when they pass through the atmosphere, they heat up. Some are destroyed, some parts of objects survive re-entry and hit the surface of the Earth.
But there is still a percentage of sightings that remain a mystery.
I saw all reports on flying saucers that came into the Air Force operations room. I should think 90% of them, perhaps 95%, could be explained away. But there were 5% unexplainable.
There's always a small group of sightings that can't be explained, but you know, there are always a small group of murders in Los Angeles that can't be explained every year. But it would be bizarre in the extreme, you have to admit, to suggest that those particular murders weren't committed by humans, they were committed by aliens, for example. I mean, the fact that some are unexplained doesn't constitute proof, or even evidence.
There is dramatic new evidence from the Hubble telescope that the chances of there being life elsewhere in the universe are far greater than was ever imagined. In October 1998, looking 12 billion years back in time, Hubble revealed an early universe with twice as many galaxies than was previously thought.
We know that life probably comes about pretty easily when the conditions are right, the temperature situation, the humidity, and so on. And we find life forms in very hostile environments, on the bottom of the ocean, in hot sulfur springs, and so on. I think that out there in this vast, vast universe, I'm pretty sure there must be many, many life forms. It must be teeming with life forms.
But if the universe is teeming with life forms, some of which may be more technically advanced than we are, why should they not have been visiting Earth?
We aren't that important with our own little planet, with our medium-class sun in a distant corner of our galaxy in one of the spiral arms. And here you got people who are saying that we are the most important folks in the universe because we are being visited again and again by superior beings.
There is no doubt that a UFO phenomenon does exist, and it's global. But so far there's no conclusive evidence that it has an extraterrestrial dimension. Whenever such evidence is presented, on close examination, it seems to fade away.
I think if they were here, if there was some evidence that they were here, you'd have tens of thousands of university researchers beavering away on this problem at night. I mean, this would be the most important scientific problem they could work on. And the fact that they're not doing it speaks volumes to me.
Okay, turbo fans are up.
Rather than look for ET on Earth, scientists at NASA are firmly focused on a search elsewhere. If it works, Dr. Lake Mirabeau's experiment with pulsed laser propulsion may be the method that puts spacecraft of the future far beyond the pull of Earth's gravity. It's part of an adventurous NASA program that's pushing hard at the boundaries of science.
We're supposed to be looking to the far edge, to the cutting edge of advanced technologies and pressing the frontiers of science. So we are going to look for new ways to do things. We have a center, the Marshall Space Flight Center, whose job is to be the center of excellence for propulsion. That means they ought to be looking at new stuff, and if they're not doing their job. If you got your foot on the pedal and you can still steer the car, you're not going fast enough, and that's what we believe around here.
The breakthrough propulsion program that we're investigating started with our interest in trying to understand a lot of the phenomena that are being discovered from Hubble and from other astronomy activities, from particle physics and studies into relativity that are uncovering a number of peculiar phenomena that might have propulsion benefits if they are pursued to some reality. So we're interested in pursuing some of these to see if in fact we could potentially approach the speed of light with travel, or possibly exceed that. There's a lot of controversy in whether that's possible or not.
NASA's not shy of controversy. In a program of cutting-edge research, Dr. David Neuver is using superconductors in powerful magnetic fields to test the claims of a Russian scientist who says he's managed to modify the immutable law of gravity. If it's possible, it could have a greater impact than the advent of the wheel.
When I was a little kid this size, if I were to have gone outside the county, it would have been a steam locomotive. Now I'm in a spaceship. Take that acceleration of science and technology and do it for several million years, or a billion years. You know, interstellar travel is probably a possibility when you get, you know, if you accelerate that amount of technology. So yeah, it's going on out there.
We have an Origins program that is looking for signs of life elsewhere beyond Earth. And by life, I don't necessarily mean multi-cell life. Right now we'd settle for single-cell life somewhere.
A meteorite that was found in the Antarctic in 1996 appears to show microscopic signs of life. And it's believed to have come to Earth from Mars some 13,000 years ago. The possibility of life on Mars, however simple, has helped galvanize NASA into an ambitious new series of missions into space.
If you really want to get inspired and look to the future, look at science fiction books or magazine articles about the future. Look at the predictions that science fictions are writing, and then go, you know, way beyond that. And that's probably where we're headed.
We have ignition and we have liftoff of NASA's Mars Climate Orbiter as we continue to explore the mysteries of the red planet.
On December the 11th, 1998, the Mars Climate Orbiter mission left Earth. On that day, the search for ET began in earnest.
There'll be a mission every 2 years for the next 10 years, culminating with a Mars sample return in around 2003, 2004, bringing it back around 2006 with the first samples back. So that's going to be a step towards learning, is there life elsewhere beyond Earth? We've got the Galileo probe going through the system of Jupiter, and they've discovered a layer of ice around Europa, one of the moons of Jupiter. Well, we think under that layer of ice there might be an ocean 60 miles deep. Two things you need for life are a source of water and a source of energy. If Europa has that, it could lead to very exciting breakthroughs. And then, through things like the Hubble Space Telescope and the next generation telescope that will come after the turn of the century, we're going to focus our instruments on planets in other solar systems. And then try to find out, might there be life there? In a universe of points of light, you know, trillions of points of light out there, the notion that we are unique, that we are somehow the only place in the celestial neighborhood where there's life is inconceivable to me. Now the matter is, can we find that life? Will we recognize it when we see it? And does it look anything like what we expect here?